Hello guys, welcome back to LR Anime. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of BTTH Rebirth of Emperor Yang episode number 84 based on novel. So let's start. Oh, is this the Western region? It looks a little different from what Jiu Li said. Xiao Yang looked at the bustling scene in the city and couldn't help feeling a little surprised. Jiu Li told him long before he came that the Western region is the most barren place on the mainland. Almost all of them are dead places without grass. The dry and hot climate is simply unbearable for ordinary people. Here, even the semi-imperial strong should be careful when walking everywhere, otherwise they will die if they are not careful. However, the scene in front of Xiao Yang at the moment was quite different from what he thought of the Western regions, which even made him doubt that he had really come to the Western regions. Seeing the suspicious color on Xiao Yang's face, Luo Jin smiled and explained to Xiao Yang with a smile. You must also think that the Western region is a very deserted place. Xiao Yang frowned slightly and looked at Luo Jin. His eyebrows seemed to say, isn't it? At least, the Western region, which is known from others, is indeed a barren land. Luo Jin shook his head and smiled, raised his eyebrows and asked, that old guy Jiu Li told you? Xiao Yang nodded. Luo Jin nodded slightly and continued. He's right. Xiao Yang first looked a little sluggish on his face, and then stared at Luo Jin with both eyes, as if he wanted to eat people. Luo Jin immediately laughed at Xiao Yang and said, Guli really said that, but he was only half right. Xiao Yang looked stunned, then slightly surprised. Half, what does this mean? The Western regions are indeed deserted, but at the same time, they are also prosperous. As you can see at the moment, it is different from what Jiu Li said. Here, green mountains surround and green water flows. But this is indeed the Western region. The only difference is that this is the Shilin region. Shilin region? Xiao Yang frowned again. He had never heard of these things. Luo Jin also knew this, so he opened his mouth again and said to Xiao Yang, the Western region is divided into two regions. First, it is close to other states and regions, and it is also a relatively prosperous place. It is called Shilin region. It is as prosperous as the southern region, and it is also the gathering place for most of the strong people in the Western region. The other region is the desolate Western region that Guli told you. It is in the extreme west of the Western region. It is the inner region of the Western region and the most desolate place in the whole continent. At the same time, it is also the location of Tianjue ancient tomb. Finally, Luo Jin's voice was so small that only Xiao Yang could hear it clearly, but after hearing the 4 words at the end of the words, Xiao Yang couldn't help but change his face slightly. Tianjue ancient tomb is the strong one in Huayuan territory. Even now, his tomb house is still reluctant to give up by people in the Western regions. Even the 4 ancient sects have coveted it for hundreds of years, which is enough to see how great attraction the tomb house of Ju Master on this day is. At this moment, Xiao Yang can't help thinking of the Tianjue step he was carrying. This thing is one of the 3 keys to open the Tianjue ancient tomb. When walking in the Western regions in the future, you must be careful everywhere. Once the people of the 4 main sects find his Tianjue step, it will bring endless trouble to Xiao Yang. Get out of the way. Get out of the way. Today, the city mainly recruits a group of pro-guards here. Those with strength below 3 stars and half-emperors, get out of the way. Suddenly, in front of the street, there was a rude and arrogant scream from the crowded crowd. With the spread of the scream, the crowd in front was quickly rushed away, and a group of heavily armed people in armor strode out of the crowd. Xiao Yang and Luo Jin met here. They were too lazy to cause trouble. They wanted to retreat to the crowd. Those 2 boys, stop. Hearing the words obviously meant something, Xiao Yang couldn't help frowning slightly and looked at each other. Then they all turned around with a depressed face and looked at the group of strong figures in front of the street. As soon as the middle-aged man headed by Xiao Yang saw Xiao Yang, he immediately brightened up, sneered in his heart, and without trace crushed a palm-sized jade piece. Then he looked at Xiao Yang with a heroic smile on his face. When he came near, the middle-aged man first glanced at Xiao Yang. When he noticed the breath of the latter 5-star and half-emperor, he couldn't help but shoot a shocking light in his eyes. As far as he knew, the man's strength should be only 3-star and half-emperor at most. How only 2 years has been to the 5-star and half-emperor. Although he was extremely shocked, the middle-aged man still laughed with slight twitching muscles in the corners of his eyes. Well, that's good. You can raise your strength to 5-star and half-emperor at this age. These cultivation talents are really first-class cultivation wizard. Okay, I'll take it. The voice fell, and without waiting for Xiao Yang to act, the middle-aged man's eyes looked at Luo Jin beside Xiao Yang. As soon as he saw the latter, the big man's eyes immediately showed a look of horror. In front of him, the young man standing next to Xiao Yang was even more powerful than Xiao Yang. He had reached the level of 8 stars and a half emperors. 8 star and a half emperor, this strength, even compared with him, is only 1 star weaker. Unexpectedly, this seemingly young man can reach this level. Knowing Luo Jin's strength and looking at Xiao Yang, the middle-aged man was shocked. Both of them can be called the real pride of heaven. It's just a pity. When he recovered, the middle-aged man looked at Xiao Yang with satisfaction and said with a laugh, "Good. A 5 star and a half emperor, an 8 star and a half emperor, good, just you. Go back with me. From now on, you will be my pro-guard. You will enjoy endless glory and wealth in the future, ha ha." Hearing the resolute words of the middle-aged man in front of them, Xiao Yang and Luo Jin frowned deeper. The man in front of them didn't pay much attention to them. A word decided their fate. Did they really pinch them as soft persimmons? "Your Excellency, it seems too overbearing." Xiao Yang raised his head slightly and looked at the middle-aged man who was a little taller than him, with a cold voice of dissatisfaction. Why, bullying is synonymous with lousy. In this cold green city, whoever lousy wants to stay, he has to stay, and whoever lousy wants to die, he has to die. At the same time, the huge fist of the middle-aged man was also placed in front of Xiao Yang. The whole fist unexpectedly blocked the expression on Xiao Yang's face. At the moment, Xiao Yang's face looked like a sneer. After a long time, Xiao Yang slowly began to sneer and said, "Oh, look at this. Are you going to fight? Who has a big fist can speak in Lungsue City. You are still good with the strength of 5 star and half emperor." Without waiting for the words of the middle-aged man to spit out, Xiao Yang suddenly stepped back. At the same time, with a wave of his big sleeve, a black light flashed. Bei Wang's strong body suddenly appeared in front of Xiao Yang, and a punch was fiercely welcomed to the middle-aged man's fist. Bang! With one blow, Bei Wang's body stood still, but when he looked at the middle-aged man, he couldn't stop. After withdrawing dozens of steps, he shook his body and forcibly stabilized. The middle-aged man looked up. Opposite him, in front of Xiao Yang, a strong figure like an iron tower was staring at him indifferently. When the middle-aged man saw this scene, his face suddenly coagulated slightly. In a twinkling, the disdain sneer of the previous moment had long gone, but instead appeared a deep dignified puppet of 9 stars and half emperors. "Who is this boy?" The middle-aged man stared at the North King with a dignified face. Xiao Yang behind him shocked the middle-aged man. He didn't expect that a boy of 5 star and half emperor level would have a card of this level. Obviously, with the North King's hand, he had no choice but to get Xiao Yang. "Ha, I'm clumsy. It seems that the child doesn't intend to invest in me. Ha, in that case, I won't force you anymore. Please help yourself, child." Knowing that he could not force Xiao Yang to stay, the middle-aged man no longer forced affectation. Instead, he changed into a smile that looked quite kind. At the same time, a step made way for Xiao Yang and Luo Jin. The middle-aged man's action was naturally seen by the crowd around him. Immediately, everyone's eyes involuntarily fell on the North King in front of Xiao Yang. A 9 star and a half emperor was blown back by one blow, which can be interpreted as that the North King took the lead and was destined for a surprise attack, but the middle-aged man's concession to Xiao Yang in the twinkling of an eye had to make everyone suspicious. When some high-ranking semi-emperors in the crowd looked at the eyes of the North King after some exploration, they were also gradually filled with a look of horror. It's comparable to a puppet at the level of 9 stars and half emperors. It's no wonder the middle-aged man didn't dare to fight it. Seeing that the middle-aged man in front of him offered to give way, Xiao Yang was also slightly surprised. He didn't expect that the middle-aged man in front of him should be so decisive, but it would save him a lot of trouble. Get out of the way ahead, and Xiao Yang was not polite. He winked at Luo Jin on one side and walked towards the end of the street where the crowd gave way. After that, Luo Jin followed, and the Northern King was the last. At Xiao Yang's speed, he naturally won't be afraid of this middle-aged man. It's Luo Jin. In the face of 9 star and half emperor, his strength of 8 star and half emperor is really hard to resist. Of course, it can't summarize whether he also has something against the sky to protect himself. But after the North King's death, it can make the middle-aged man afraid. As long as he is there, the middle-aged man won't dare to do it easily. Among the colorful eyes of the surrounding people, Xiao Yan and Luo Jin gradually walked away under the protection of the North King, leaving only the middle-aged men who stared at the back of the North King. When the three of Xiao Yang disappeared into the crowd in the street, a thin man wrapped in armor next to the middle-aged man looked back. First he glanced at the direction where Xiao Yang and others disappeared, and then looked at the middle-aged man with a grim expression and asked, "City Lord, do we want to catch up? If we let them continue, it's time to leave the city." Chase. That's good. Go after him. If you can stop him, I'll give him a reward. If you can't stop him, I'll kill you. Smelling the speech, the middle-aged man not only didn't show a smile on his face, but snorted angrily. He looked at the latter with a cold face, and his fierce eyes made him cold. That boy has a puppet to protect himself. Don't say it's you. Even I'm afraid. With your 7.5-star Emperor's strength, it's not as powerful as the guy around the boy. If you let me stop it, I'll stop it. With a fierce drink, the skinny man immediately retracted his head and asked in a weak voice again with a look of advice. Then, "The city lord, do you just let them leave like this? What else do you want? This boy is obviously not ordinary people. We can't touch him easily with our power. Moreover, our task is only to put him in Lungsue City. As long as we delay enough time, this boy will be dealt with." Looking at the back of Beiwang, who finally disappeared into the crowd, the middle-aged man whispered coldly. On the other hand, Xiao Yang and Luo Jin didn't go out of the city as the middle-aged man imagined, but walked slowly towards an attic in the middle of the city, which is the branch of Union Pavilion. Before coming, Luo Jin told Xiao Yang that there was a branch of Union in the Lungsue City in the western regions, where they were about to arrive. At the moment, their goal is here. On their way, Xiao Yang also asked Luo Jin about the 4 main doors. Of course, not surprisingly, when Luo Jin said the overall strength of the 4 major doors, Xiao Yang's face suddenly became heavy. The strength of the 4 ancient sects in the western regions is indeed as predicted by Xiao Yang. They are all super sects that have the real power to fight the emperor. Xiao Yang thinks he is a strong man at the level of fighting emperor. Even so far, he has really seen only Qingfeng and others in the Shenling family. The 32 Lingwei of the Shenling family are super strong men above the level of fighting emperor. But I've seen Gui, the power of the strong fighting emperor. He just saw 1 or 2 on the power of fighting emperor in the Grey Mountains. This still makes Xiao Yang powerless to deal with it. According to Luo Jin, the patriarchs of the 4 ancient sects have advanced to fight the emperor hundreds of years ago. After so many years of cultivation, their strength is really top in the western regions. This sentence is also enough to show the strength of the 4 of them. After all, it's not just comparing a few people. It's based on the whole western region. Their strength is at the real peak level. Among the 4 major sects, the strongest one is the leader of the refining sect, Chen Array. In fact, his power is the strong one of the 8-star Do Emperor. In addition, his sect is dominated by Array mags, which complement each other. The strength of the whole sect can be regarded as the most powerful existence among the 4 major sects. However, the array arranged by its patriarch is said to have a terrorist defense that can't be broken by the strong fighting emperor. The second is the Zhanwu sect, which is famous for its hegemonic force. Its sect name is Wujishan. Its physical cultivation is almost invincible. It is as strong as a rock. King Kong is not bad. It is also a powerful man of the 8-star Do Emperor. Its combat power is the most frightening existence among the 4 sect leaders. It is said that he once forcibly killed a Shenyang beast at the level of 1-star Dudi with flesh and blood without using fighting spirit. The defense of Shenyang beast is one of the best in the whole world of Warcraft, but even so, it can't escape death in the face of Wujishan. The third one, Janming, the leader of Tianjian sect, is as powerful as Wujishan. One is famous for his strong body and the other is famous for his strong sword. The sword meaning of Janming is so strong that when you think about it, there are thousands of swords everywhere, which makes people have nowhere to avoid. The final outcome of those who fight against it is usually to be pierced by countless sword meanings, and their death looks extremely miserable. Janming's attack power is almost the same as that of Wujishan, but the latter's body is strong, and Janming is usually helpless. As for whether it is afraid of Wujishan, no one knows. As for the 4th of the 4 patriarchs, the sect where he is located is called Withered Leaf Sect. The strength of the whole sect is also the weakest of the 4 ancient sects. Even the strength of his patriarch is much weaker than the first 3. So far, the strength of the leader of the Withered Leaf Sect is no more than the 7-star fighting emperor. Of course, it is also an incomparable terror for Xiao Yang. But this is the real last number among the 4 major sects, and it is precisely because of this that the withered leaf sect often becomes a laughingstock in the mouth of the other 3 sects. However, Xiao Yang also found from Luo Jin's words that Luo Jin knows a lot about the first 3 of the 4 major gates, and as for the dead leaf sect, it seems that even his explanation is poor. While they were walking and talking, Xiao Yang looked up and found that the branch of Union Pavilion in Lungsui City had arrived. Western Regions, Uniange Branch. The whole attic is basically the same in both external modeling and internal decoration. At the moment, Xiao Yang and Luo Jin are sitting in the attic on the 6th floor. In front of them, there is an old man dressed in brocade robes and with a resolute face. Hihi, this must be the little friend of the rock owl. As early as 2 years ago, the old man Xuanya in the southern region had already passed on a lot of things about you. I've always been curious about you, old man. When I see you today, you're really the dragon among people. Ha 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 ha. Hearing the old man's praise for himself, Xiao Yang also smiled and shook his head, got up, hugged the old man and said respectfully, I'm flattered. I'm just relying on some means. If it's compared with the real cultivation strength, I'm still too poor. Seeing Xiao Yang's respectful appearance, the old man nodded secretly in his heart, not arrogant and impetuous. This is the psychological quality that a cultivator should really have. When the old man heard Xiao Yang's words, he smiled again and said with a smile, Hihi, what about means? As long as you can have the power to defeat the strong, no matter where you get it, as long as you can control that power, you are a strong. You should always firmly believe that in this continent, those who only recognize fists and judge their people by their cultivation are just some small minions who can't stand the table. Xiao Yang nodded slightly, then bowed to the old man and hugged him. Thank you for your instruction. The old man smiled again and then turned to say, You don't have to call me elder. I'm called Strange Shengfen. My real name is Zhong Yi. I'm in charge of the Union Pavilion branch in Lungsui City. If you encounter any trouble in the future, you can come to me. As long as I can do it, I won't be stingy. Well, I'll thank Mr. Zhong here first. Xiao Yang said respectfully to old Zhong again. Hey, old Zhong, you can't underestimate him. Just now, he forced a 9-star and a half emperor back, and beat a 9-star and a half emperor a few days ago. In other words, with his strength now, there is no opponent under the emperor. Oh! Luo Jin's sudden words also made Zhong Yi's face slightly change. Looking at Xiao Yang's eyes, he unconsciously showed a touch of brilliance. As far as he knows, Xiao Yang 2 years ago was able to fight with the 8-star and a half emperor without losing, but that was only under the premise that Xiao Yang used his high-level fighting skills. But now, he was able to force back the 9-star and half emperors with the strength of 5-star and half emperors. This growth rate is really terrible. It's hard to imagine how terrible Xiao Yang's strength would be over time. In this regard, Xiao Yang shrugged non-committally. For this, he didn't want to explain too much. He didn't bother to show his real strength too much in front of people, no matter who he was. Zhong Yi slowly withdrew his eyes, then looked at Luo Jin and frowned. After a little hesitation, he said, Your Excellency, I feel it necessary to tell you one thing. Luo Jin heard the speech, slightly raised his eyebrows, and saw Laro Zhong's solemn look. He couldn't help nodding suspiciously. Seeing this, Xiao Yang on one side could not help looking suspiciously at old Zhong. The latter didn't care about Xiao Yang's eyes, but nodded and slowly said, 2 years ago, I noticed that the 4 strong men with extremely obscure breath came to Lungsui City. Because their whereabouts were mysterious at that time, it was difficult for me to find out their exact location. However, after my secret investigation afterwards, I suspected that the 4 men should be the patriarchs of the 4 major sects. As soon as he said this, Xiao Yang's face changed instantly, while Luo Jin frowned. After thinking for a moment, he raised his eyes to Zhong Yi and asked, Old Zhong, do you know what those guys are here for? Zhong Yi shook his head lightly and frowned, expressing helplessness. He was also not aware of the exact purpose of the 4 guys coming to Kui City. Although he had secretly investigated him after that, he was very difficult to find out what effective news was due to their extraordinary status. In this regard, Luo Jin was also helpless, and when he looked at Xiao Yang aside, his face looked a little stunned. At the moment, Xiao Yang's face was extremely gloomy, and the look on his face was also very dignified. Even, while his mood fluctuated, the turbulent fighting spirit in his body turned up at the moment, which made the void around him rise up in circles of invisible space ripples. When Xiao Yang heard that the 4 sect leaders gathered in Lungsui City, he immediately thought of the Liu family in the southern region. After all, if they gathered in Lenquicheng for the Liu family, Wouldn't it say that they had taken over the Liu family in Qingyang City during their absence? Brother Yang Xiao, did you think of something? Seeing Xiao Yang's gloomy face and the fighting spirit in his body, Luo Jin finally couldn't help asking. Hearing the speech, Xiao Yang took a deep breath, recovered himself, and slowly recovered his fighting spirit. After a good film, he spoke to Zhong Yi in a slightly low tone and asked, "Old Zhong, do you know whether the four of them used the transmission array, or whether they suddenly disappeared in Lungsue City for a period of time and then suddenly appeared again?" Xiao Yang blurted out his words, but Zhong Yi and Luo Jin were stunned. They looked at each other and raised their eyebrows slightly. Then Luo Jin looked at Xiao Yang jokingly and asked, "Why, Brother Yang Xiao, do you think they left the western regions and went to the wild ancient city at that time?" Xiao Yang nodded solemnly and said in a heavy tone, "This is not impossible, because the Liu family they have been looking for is on the southwest border, which is close to the wild ancient city." Hearing the speech, Luo Jin slightly raised his eyebrows. Unexpectedly, Xiao Yang's Tianjueba actually came from the Liu family. However, looking at his face at the moment, there should be some connection between Xiao Yang and the Liu family. Otherwise, it is impossible to pay so much attention to the trend of the four ancient sects. Ha ha ha. A moment later, Xiao Yang, whose face was solemn, heard the laughter from Luo Jin's mouth. When he turned his eyes and looked back, he found that the latter was also looking at him jokingly. "Hey, Brother Yang Xiao, don't you forget that there is still the headquarters of my cloud pavilion in the wild ancient city. How dare those four guys easily appear on my territory?" Hearing this, Xiao Yang's face suddenly solidified, and then returned to his mind. He remembered that there were Union Pavilion and Luo Laro in the wild ancient city. The patriarchs of the four main sects were afraid of them. Naturally, they would not easily go to the wild ancient city, and even if they did, how could he know by the relationship between Luo Jin and Xiao Yang? Call dash. In this way, Xiao Yang can finally feel at ease. Since Xiao Yang got Tianjuebu, he has an invisible sense of responsibility for the Liu family who was not familiar with him. After all, if the Liu family took Tianjuebu just to bribe Xiao Yang would not be too interested in his Liu family. But later, after practicing Tianjueba, Xiao Yang played a vital role in Xiao Yang's battles. Even several times, he saved his life and saved him from fire and water. This can be regarded as a life-saving grace for Xiao Yang. When Yongquan reports the kindness of saving lives, this is Xiao Yang's personality. Xiao Yang, who has taken Tianjueban, will never allow anything to happen to the Liu family again. It's like the Mitre family in those days. The next day, when Xiao Yang left Union Pavilion and walked towards the gate of Lungsue City, an insignificant figure also quietly followed behind him. Of course, all this has nothing to hide under the powerful soul power of Xiao Yang's return, but Xiao Yang didn't find it out. He also wants to see who this is and bite him so hard. In a moment, Xiao Yang had come to the city gate. Unexpectedly, at noon, the city gate could not be opened. Two semi-emperor strong men stood on the city gate, and the terrible semi-emperor authority swept away, pressing down all the people who wanted to make trouble below. Damn. When is it? Why don't you open the gate? Yes, why not open the gate? Why not open the gate? Let the city master out. We need to argue with him. Why don't you let us leave Lungsue City? There are hundreds of people here. Even if he is a semi-emperor, he can't let us out of the city for no reason. Yes. There's so much nonsense. Want to theory? Then talk about strength. If you don't have strength, don't want to leave the city today. With a cold hum, the body of a strong man dressed in a brocade robe suddenly burst. Then, a terrible smell belonging to the 8-star-and-a-half emperor swept in front of the city gate. At the moment when the breath swept through, the crowd below suddenly seemed to be knocked down by the waves, withdrew more than a dozen steps back, and then fell to the ground with a red face. In front of the semi-imperial strongman, their strength of fighting respect and saint is not enough. Although there are many of them, these exist like mole ants in the eyes of the semi-imperial strongman. No matter how many you are, it is just a slap. Is this the power of the semi-emperor strong? At this moment, the people below were overwhelmed by this momentum, and finally had a more accurate understanding of the terror of the semi-imperialist strong. In front of the semi-imperialist strong men, their so-called strength is the existence like air. Quack 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 quack. There was a strange smile. The semi-emperor strong man in a brocade robe above the city gate looked down at the people kneeling down below with disdain. For him, the people in front of him were just mole ants. Today, don't say it's a group of waste, even if the semi-emperor and strong come, you can't leave Lungsue city. Zhu Shan, you are a great prestige. This busy Chai Chue city 8 stars and half-emperor can not only you, but has the final say here. Just as the strong man in brocade robes began to drink coldly, there was another cold hum in the sky, but it came again. The meaning of his words was directed at the brocade-robed semi-emperor who had just spoken. Who am I? It turns out that I am the Sword Emperor. With your cultivation strength, I am not weaker than me, but unfortunately, there are 2 8.5 emperors here. With a sneer, the half-emperor in brocade robe and another half-emperor strong man beside him suddenly shocked. Suddenly, a terrible half-emperor's authority swept in all directions in an instant, which made the people in the square city with heavy faces vomit blood and retreat. They really can't bear the pressure of the strong half-emperor, and the most deadly thing at the moment is that the owner of the pressure is 2 8-star and half-emperors. When the pressure of the 2 8.5 emperors on the gate was released together, the old man in yellow robe couldn't help but change slightly, and the look on his old face immediately became dignified. Compared with the tragedy of the people around him, Xiao Yan, who was at the end of the crowd, was calm, but invisible. His terrible soul power had already spread to a distance within 1,000 feet. During this period, Xiao Yang has noticed that there is a very strong breath, which is running towards this side. The owner of the breath is the middle-aged man who met on the street yesterday. The latter's goal is to point directly at himself. In this regard, Xiao Yang's eyes narrowed falsely, and suddenly thought of the man who had been following him secretly just now. If it's good, it must be him to lead the way for the latter. When Xiao Yang went to look for the guy again, he found that the guy had escaped from his exploration range for such a moment. Obviously, the man was by no means comparable to ordinary people. But what makes Xiao Yang curious is, why is the middle-aged man still staring at him? When he first saw the middle-aged man yesterday, Xiao Yang once saw something unusual in his eyes. However, Xiao Yang didn't know where it was unusual. However, from the current rapid action of the middle-aged man, the result he wanted to know should not be too far away. At the same time, on the void, the old man in yellow robe faced the pressure of 2 8.5 emperors at the same time. He also couldn't bear it, but for a moment, his face turned a little white. With a cold hum, the body of the 8.5-star emperor named Zoshan standing on the city gate was suddenly shocked. With the outbreak of a breath, the old man in yellow robe turned pale and quickly retreated back. It's far-fetched to face 2 8.5 emperors at the same time. Let's fight together. Let's make an example of him today, so that these guys can know who to listen to in Lungsue city. With a cold drink, Zhu Shan and the 8.5-star emperor suddenly flashed. In the twinkling of an eye, they had appeared in front of the old man in yellow robe. With a wave of his big sleeve, he slapped the old man in yellow robe on his chest. Boom! The next moment, in the astonished eyes of the old man in yellow robe, a figure dressed in black robe stood in front of him and blew out with one hand, blocking the bombardment of Zhu Shan, one of the 2 8.5 emperors who came face to face. On the side of the black-robed figure, a strong figure like an iron tower also easily took over the fierce blow of the other 8.5-star emperor. As soon as Julie shook, he blew the 8.5-star emperor out. Yellow spring palm. Broken. Xiao Yang drank in his mouth, and his right arm suddenly shook. With a terrible force, his 2 palms were separated. Xiao Yang retreated 2 steps, while Zoshan, the North King who was worried about Xiao Yang, hurriedly retreated to the city gate. Boy, I didn't expect it to be you again. At the moment Zhu Shan raised his eyes, he saw Xiao Yang's familiar face yesterday, and immediately he couldn't help frowning and yelling. Oh, it's just a coincidence. I happen to be going out of the city, and I see you want to speak with strength, so I'll take the opportunity to try whether I'm qualified to go out of the city. Hearing Zhu Shan's words, Xiao Yang chuckled and looked indifferent. However, the voice fell in Xiao Yang's mouth. Without waiting for Zhu Shan to speak, another loud laughter came from afar on the edge of the sky. Ha ha ha, are you leaving so soon? Yesterday, the master here didn't compensate his friend. I'm still sorry. If you leave like this, I won't be ashamed to die. Oh, you and I don't know each other. Why should I be ashamed? If you take your Yongguan road and I cross my single wooden bridge, it's irrelevant. Don't you? Do you still want me to stay as a pro-guard for you? Hearing those high-sounding words, Xiao Yang hooked the corners of his mouth and showed a cold smile. He stared at the middle-aged man who appeared above the city gate and said sarcastically, "Ha ha ha, you are serious. With your knowledge, I dare not let you be my pro-guard. I just don't know each other. After you and I fought yesterday, I also respect my friends very much. I hope you and I can become real good friends. After that, many friends and many ways, ha ha. Seeing Xiao Yang's indifferent appearance, the middle-aged man was not so anxious. He looked at Xiao Yang with a smile. There was a brilliant flash in a pair of small eyes. Oh, my friend? What a friend. Is it difficult to be your friend? Is it all by tracking? Hearing the speech, Xiao Yang couldn't help laughing, and the face of the middle-aged man suddenly became ugly under Xiao Yang's words. This. The middle-aged man was struck by Xiao Yang's words. He didn't expect that Xiao Yang noticed that someone was following him early in the morning, but why didn't he find out that person? Is it to ridicule him at this moment? Oh, why, can't you answer? In that case, I won't say hello anymore. Seeing the middle-aged man's speechless appearance, Xiao Yang couldn't help laughing, and the people below and the semi-emperor strong men above the sky were full of doubt when they looked at them. Hearing Xiao Yang's words, the middle-aged man didn't have time to catch his breath, but then Xiao Yang moved, swept up the void, stood opposite the middle-aged man, stared at each other with dark eyes, smiled and said, "If there's nothing else, I'll excuse you." The voice fell. Xiao Yang moved and wanted to bypass the middle-aged man and fly away outside the city. Wait. Xiao Yang just moved, but the middle-aged man stepped out and stood in front of Xiao Yang. His face was low and said, "I think you'd better wait. The weather looks great today, but in my opinion, there may be a storm. You might as well stay with me for one night and go tomorrow." "Oh, I don't think so. The weather is perfect. It's a good day to practice and travel. Moreover, even if there is a storm, will you care about my accomplishments?" While Xiao Yang's voice fell, there was a hurricane in the void where they were. The hurricane formed a huge tornado invisibly, surrounding Xiao Yang and them. The terrible storm was raging in the sky above the city gate. The appearance of this scene directly caused a commotion among the people in the square city. For most people who have never seen Xiao Yang, facing the 9-star-and-a-half emperor with the strength of 5-star-and-a-half emperor, Xiao Yang's behavior is almost the same as death. However, after a small number of semi-imperial strong men recognized Xiao Yang on the spot, someone couldn't help shouting, "Isn't the young man in black in front of him the young man who forced the middle-aged man back the day before?" When people were shocked by Xiao Yang's achievements the day before, some semi-imperialists who came to the western regions from the wild ancient city recognized that the man in black was the rock owl who was famous in the wild ancient city of the southern region. Suddenly, all kinds of amazing achievements of Xiao Yang in the wild ancient city were turned out. Some things that have been well known in the wild ancient city, but at this moment, they have once again become shocking news. In a short moment, the name of Rock Owl has been deeply in the hearts of everyone in Lungsue City. Well, I'm too lazy to tell you more nonsense. Tell me who you are and why you come to trouble me. It seems that we've never met before. After a long silence, Xiao Yang finally made a cold hum impatiently. Somehow, the more he spent like this, the more Xiao Yang felt a dangerous smell. The middle-aged man in front of him always gave him an uneasy illusion. Generally speaking, Xiao Yang now has the North King and Xiao Jin. Under the Emperor, he is no longer afraid of anyone, but the middle-aged man in front of him is an exception, which makes Xiao Yang feel shocked in his heart. Unexpectedly, are you so famous in the southern region? Unfortunately, I'm a strong man with 9-stars-and-a-half emperors. I'm more than a star and a half as strong as the 8-stars-and-a-half emperors they say. The middle-aged man stared at Xiao Yang cautiously. Although his strength was far better than Xiao Yang, he also knew clearly that in Xiao Yang's hands, there was still a terrible puppet with strength comparable to his, which he must not take lightly. Hehe, if I say that these are the achievements of 2 years ago, what do you think now? What? With Xiao Yang's smile falling, the middle-aged man suddenly felt like lightning. Xiao Yang in front of him fought against the 8-star-and-a-half emperor 2 years ago and fell in an invincible position. It's hard to imagine how terrible his strength is now 2 years later. Moreover, as far as he knows, Xiao Yang's strength 2 years ago was only 3-stars-and-a-half emperors. Now, he has improved the strength of 2 stars in 2 years. This cultivation speed can be called the first person in history at the half-emperor level. At least, in his impression, except Xiao Yang, he had never seen the second person who practiced so fast. So now, can you answer my question? Who are you and why are you blocking me here? Hearing the cold cry in Xiao Yang's mouth, the middle-aged man regained his mind. A sneer appeared on a face full of flesh at the moment. Ha ha, if you want to know who made me wait for you here, it depends on your ability. The voice fell. The middle-aged man shook his right arm and waved his palm fiercely. With a dark light flashed, the next moment, a dark board axe appeared in the middle-aged man's hand. North King. Seeing this scene, Xiao Yan was no longer polite. Under the sound of shouting, Bei Wang's strong body suddenly turned into a black light and greeted the middle-aged man head-on. "Ha ha, Zhu Shan is so beautiful. You too will take this boy. Be sure to give me speed to take him again. As long as you take him, I will guarantee you to be promoted to the 9-star and half emperor." While talking, the middle-aged men had fought with the king of Yubei. The fierce collision sound came one after another, and sparks splashed everywhere. A 9-star and half emperor level war was being staged between heaven and earth. When Xiao Yang turned his eyes to the other side, sure enough, Zhu Shan and Ruo Xue were turning their eyes to him. At this moment, the terror of the 2 8.5 emperors broke out at this moment. They moved together and rushed over to face Xiao Yang and Meng. Xiao Yang ignored this, but looked again at the fierce middle-aged man who was fighting with the North King at the moment, with a look of irony on his face. "Do you bully the less with more? Xiao Jin. This video will end here.